to our, well, kind of regular December board meeting, which we're holding tonight, and our budget forum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Loretta Bright. Here. Judy Stay.
Here.
John Street.
Here.
Scott Latham.
Here.
Brian Cogan.
Here.
In the event of an emergency, visitors are advised that they may exit this room from one side door which leads directly into the parking lot. In the event of an emergency, everyone is asked to move away from the building and do not attempt to leave in your automobile since this may cause traffic problems and blocking from the emergency.
Thank you, Patty. The first thing on our agenda is the first hearing of visitors. At this time, we request questions and comments be kept to agenda items only. Does anyone care to address the board this time? Okay. Our consent agenda, which is approval of our minutes from our regular meeting of November 18th. Our financial matters, and again, these go back to November because of the snow. We didn't meet in December. It includes transfers, extra classroom activity fund, contracts. We're surplusing some items and CSE recommendations. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any conversation, questions? All in favor? Old business, anyone? That brings us to superintendent's report. Dr. Morrow.
Thank you. So, Happy New Year to everyone, and welcome back. I'm just going to jump over here where I put a PowerPoint.
We can see it from here, right?
Yes, you guys can see it. So I just wanted to share, and again, this was meant to be shared last month, shortly after it was done, but we were pushed back a little bit, and we are in a very fluid situation. So even a month old, these are month-old numbers. So when it came to the survey that we sent out to the community, it came back overwhelmingly that 68% of our families would like students to be in school more regularly. Understanding that, we're not going to be doing it exactly the way we are now. We would still have all the guidelines that we're required to have in place. But 32%, would prefer to leave things the way they are. So these were the results of our survey. We had 244 responses. When you look at our district, we're really only talking about our junior, senior high school. Our elementary was not included in this. We have 50 students that were on distance learning, some of whom did answer, some did not. It wasn't a bad response. It wasn't a great response. I would have liked maybe 50 more, but it was a fairly indicative indication. So when it comes to returning students to school, where are we now? We wanted to move towards returning students to school prior to break, but our numbers started to change. And I know I shared this at the last board meeting when we were together. As our numbers started to change, we pushed back a little bit. We did start to look at the data that we had when it came to our students. And it was very clear that we had two subgroups of students that were clearly not performing as well as they had in the past. After our grades came out, as much as I think everybody would like to perform better, they weren't terribly different with most of our students. But our students with disabilities were clearly struggling in this model, and our E&L students were clearly struggling in this model. We put together a plan to try to bring them back first. Ideally, we would have preferred to do it before break, but right before break, it was, there was a lot going on with the virus, and it were very tenuous times. We also looked at our calendar. The end of this month, we end this quarter. So we decided to work on the week after we end the quarter, from the 25th to the 1st, starting to bring those kids back in as early as the 25th, possibly as late as the 1st, which is 2 Mondays. We're lining that up with what we're told from the Department of Health and the CDC and the state, and when they believe that the holiday surge will start receding, and also our school calendar to try to make it, easier for our students. So, our push right now for this month is to try to get our neediest students in more. It will result in a scenario where they won't always be 6 feet apart. They will always be 6 feet apart side to side in classrooms. They will be able to be spaced everywhere else in the building. And a good part of the time, they'll be 6 feet apart front to back. But at other times, they'll be less than 6 feet, and they will always have a shield and mask. So we will be in adherence. We just won't be as far apart as we are now. The adherence part is you have to either be 6 feet or have a barrier. We have shields on our desks. We moved all the desks over break to be able to do this into all of our classrooms, and we put shields on all of them, and we do have them all in place. So the preparation for this is we went through all the data of the report cards, we looked at all the grades, we identified whether this was truly, something that was meaningful and needed. We bought in all the desks, we put all the shields on it, so all of that type of work has been done. We're at the part of our preparation now where we would start notifying everybody in our community of what the change would be, because even though it's 2 groups of students that equal it was just around 50 students, it would change things for many of our kids. Not just for those 50, it would change things for other kids that are sitting in rooms. And we've put out our plans, and we want to make sure that as we adjust our plans, we notify our community of those adjustments so that they're aware of what we're doing in our schools. There are positives and there are negatives to this. The positives clearly are that our neediest of students that are struggling under the model we have will be in school for more instruction. It will also be positive for some of our other kids because, some of their friends will be in school. I have spoken to some of the other districts that are bringing students back in. Mattituck has all of their secondary students back in. They started before the surge, and they had almost all of their grades in before the numbers started to change. So they had never slowed in their plan like we did. When they have kids test positive, they may have more close contacts than we do. We have less. We still could have some, depending on what we're doing, but we have a lot less because of our plans and because of the fact that, quite honestly, everybody's following the plans. So there are some negatives. We believe the positives, even if we did have more kids quarantined, if you look at it in its entirety, 50 kids in a day, 2.5 days a week. If we did have some cases, and we haven't had the number of cases other places have, the quarantine, it wouldn't wash out. We'd still have a lot more kids in school a lot of the time than if we did end up with some students quarantined where we did not have as many in the past. How do we balance it? We continue to look at what's going on in our country. We continue to look at what's going on in our schools. I communicated with the superintendent in Mattituck and asked about negative consequences, how many more students went virtual, all those different things. And, we look at all of that and we weigh, what the positives and what the negatives are. We listen to what our community says. We put out to our community and asked them what they wanted. We have spoken to kids and asked them what they wanted. So, it's a little bit of a balance. And then some of that comes with understanding that, all of this stuff is in a constant state of flux. Now that they're starting to give out vaccines to people, now that the holidays are past us, things change. If something drastic were to happen, it's possible we could change our plan again about bringing kids in and when we do it. But these are our ideals. Our next steps are we're starting to notify everybody, and we're starting to plan for it and schedule for it. We have already prepared our transportation, prepared our classrooms, all those different things. We do have to work with our teachers to see what they need, if there are, for any differences like this. So there are a number of next steps, even though we've done much of the preparation for that. Our timeline going forward, ideally, would be that we do this the last week of this month. It will be our first step, so we would want to assess for 2 weeks And then we would like to bring in 2 more grade levels, and then a week later, 2 more grade levels, and then a week later, 2 more grade levels. That would put us at the end of,
Like February.
it'll be put us in the first week of March, because 1 week in February we're off. I have it written on my book there upside down, but I, I can't read it from this far away. So that's our tentative timeline for now. And
That's grade levels of ENL and,
that would be grade levels of everybody. ENL and special ed, we would like to bring in at the end of this month. 2 weeks later, we would like to bring in like K and 7. A week later, we would like to bring in, 12 and 7. We would like to bring in 8 and 11, and then 9 and 10 till we get all of our students back in, so that, once we get into the spring, and again, this is a fluid process. This is what we would like to do. Something drastic happens, we'll reassess. Something changes, if doing this drives more kids out of school into remote, it's not something we want to do. We're expecting the vaccines to start taking hold. We're expecting, the next waves to be given. We're expecting the numbers to start going down like the experts say they're going to do. With that, this would be our plan to do. It is a fluid plan, We have put it on a timeline. We've adjusted that timeline. Our last timeline was the week before vacation, we had everybody in. But the week before vacation, our numbers were double what they were the week before, and so on and so forth. So, there's a constant reassessment and reevaluation as we go, and we continue to balance what's good for all of our kids as we go through this. What's good for all of our teachers, what's good for all of our families. So that is where we're at with this. If you have questions on any of this, why don't you ask them now? I'm not really going to go through the next one much, and I'll tell you why when we get to it. But any questions from anybody on it? I've worked very closely with Lisa and Terrence. Yes?
Families can still choose to do fully remote quarterly
Yes.
if they choose to.
They
They have to.
the way that we've done it is you can go out fully remote at any time. You can only return at the end of the quarter. And you have to give us 2 weeks notice because we have to prep for it. We have to get desks in, we have to, do all those different things.
The end of the second quarter, I'm sorry, I was going to say, the end of the second quarter is coming up soon.
25th.
So in the next week,
Is the-
families would have to let you know if they.
Yes,
students are
and we usually send out a reminder 2 weeks ahead. Many of them have notified us. Our people here really, quite honestly, we're in communication regularly.
Could we get those numbers at the end of this quarter, at the end of the half of the school, how many have chosen to do what, just for our
Sure.
own reference?
Would you write that, Patty, could you write that down?
Please.
Just so that I
I
don't
think we
forget.
should.
But yeah,
I'd
absolutely.
like to have just an
Uh-huh.
idea.
After we make the change, at the end of the quarter, after the
Yeah,
ins
just
and outs?
thank
Yeah,
you.
So if we do ultimately get all of our kids back in school,
yes.
by March or whenever that is, will we continue to allow those that want to stay fully remote?
Fully remote, yes.
Will the teachers then still be doing the same model in terms of live streaming all of their classes?
Yes.
Or only if they know that they have a student at home?
Only if they have a student at home.
Right.
Yes,
Okay, but that expectation will continue then?
yes.
Okay.
We are meeting with the SFA. They asked if we would meet to look at instructional models, and, we're always willing to meet and look at things. As of now,
That's the plan.
that's the plan. But there's work with that, and, work with our teachers and to make sure they have what they need. And again, some of that depends on numbers. There are some districts that literally have such a small group of students that are out that they're offering virtual classes for them differently than we might be. So, a lot of it depends on all of that. I spoke to people in Mattituck, I spoke to some people in Nassau, and, they were in one of the districts, it wasn't Mattituck, but it was in another district, not much larger than ours. Their superintendent told me that they were planning for 20% not to be in. Because there were people in their survey, a lot of people in their survey that said, they wouldn't be comfortable with it. They were at 8% is what they ended up with. That kind of changed their plans a little bit, So after, when we get there, And when people make the decisions that they want to make, we will have definitely the 2 programs because we're required to by executive order. If people, are not comfortable with their children in school in the model we have, we're required to educate them at home virtually. So we will have that. But, my hope is it'll bring, more kids back in and give us a better opportunity to educate them and make it more comfortable for everybody. Any other questions?
Are there preparations being made either locally or that you've heard of on the state or federal level for when this whole thing is over, that we don't co-opt in-person education, like there would be no more sick days? Because, work during COVID, you can just stream everything home. And I don't agree with that at all. I mean, I thought it was fantastic that in the middle of a hybrid model, we gave everybody a snow day.
Yeah.
Because, these kids have to be kids. And I don't believe that when we have them back, God willing, soon, that we, a sick day is a sick day.
Yes.
Or even better, you don't want kids, all right, I'll be remote, but they're in Tuvalu on a vacation or something.
Sure.
Is that being discussed at
There's been conversation about the fact that what we've had to figure out throughout this pandemic might give us opportunities to educate differently. Much of that, from my way of understanding it and from what I'm looking at and reading, doesn't have much to do with saying, hey, look, you're never really going to be sick in a way. It will probably allow us to do things with students who have school anxiety that we couldn't do in the past. It might allow us to do things with medical students that used to get one-on-one home instruction, giving them opportunity to be in their classes in different ways. So there's been a lot of talk about opportunities to enhance education for people. There hasn't been talk along the lines of what you were saying that I've heard.
Well, I just heard people griping about the kids having a snow day.
Yeah.
Wow. It's snowing out.
Yes.
Kids have a snow day.
Snow days to me, snow days are part of education in this part of the country. That's kind of like, kids were wearing their pajamas inside out and they were throwing ice in the backyard. And I thought it was prudent to wait till the morning to see how bad it was. I didn't really want to have a snow day and not have snow. But I tend to agree with you. There's some people that don't, and everybody is certainly entitled to their opinions, and I think they're all well-intentioned. But, I don't hear conversations about things like that. I'm sure that someone will come up with it, but I haven't heard much about it. Yep. So this is a PowerPoint. This is a link to a PowerPoint from the state about the microclusters. I plan on going through it with you. I'm not going to be going through it with you. This will be posted. The reason I'm not going to be going through it with you is because none of it's completely really accurate. Like I said, this is a moving target. It's just as much of a moving target by New York State as it is, from us. So they came up with this microcluster approach. And if you were yellow, you had to do this much testing to stay open. If you were orange, you had to do this. First it was if you were orange or red, you were closed. Then it was, it's safer to be in schools. So we're not going to close you, but you got to test in this way, so on and so forth. All of this was supposed to have happened probably 3 or 4 percentage points ago, as far as positivity, maybe even 5 or 6 percentage points ago. It seems that now they've come up with a brand new matrix, so a lot of this is out of date and it doesn't make sense in me wasting your time going through it. Now they have a matrix where they take hospital bed availability, percentage rate, how many students in school and adults have turned up positive, all those different things, and they utilize that to decide whether your cluster is whatever color it may be. Like I said, when I put this together, it was in date. Now it's out of date, so I'm not going to spend time on it. We did questions already, but if there are any more about them, I'm happy to ask.
I have one regarding microcluster, the testing in schools. And I
Yes.
think we may have discussed it, I can't recall. What is Southold school policy regarding testing students within school? Parental permission has to be,
Yes, there.
regardless of the executive order.
regardless of the executive order, we will not test any student without written permission. Now, what we did was we surveyed our community and we asked that if we became designated as a zone, who would be willing to test. We asked all of our employees and our students because it's 20% of all of your on-site students and employees that you have. It comes out to about 875 people a day we have here between the two high school cohorts, the employees, the elementary school. That came out to 176, if I remember correctly, is our 20%. We had 407 people say that they'd be willing to test.
How often do they have to test?
Well, again, that microcluster
Oh, all
approach
right.
document.
Have we had to do it, is
If-
my question.
Excuse me?
Have we even hit that where we have?
We
haven't had to do it?
we have not had to do
that.
it.
We're not
Okay.
that zone.
We've created the plan. I met with our nurses today. They're doing their training so that they can do the testing. They're being fit tested for, K95 or N95 masks next week by the Suffolk Police Department. All of that stuff is in place because our community has kind of said, look, we prefer to test and stay open. So that's the path that we're taking. My hope is that we don't have to test. If we're a yellow zone, then every 2 weeks we have to test 20%, which is the 176 number. We would have to probably schedule 200 because there are certain things. First, I don't believe schools should be testing. We're not a hospital, we're a school. Then again, if it means the only way we can stay in school is testing, then I'll be the first one to test. I have no problem with that. But if I have a child that comes up, even if they have written consent and they're upset or not, we're not testing them, we're sending them back so we would probably have to schedule higher than the 20% because I would expect that some people might get anxious from it and I'm not gonna put people in a position where they're forced to do anything that makes them uncomfortable. So if we're a yellow zone, we'd have to test 20% every 2 weeks. And until we show that our positivity rate is lower than what the community rate is, then we could stop testing and we could stay open. If we're orange or red, then we have to test 20% every 4 weeks, 10% in the first 2 weeks, 10% in the second 2 weeks. So that's about a little over 200. We would do random testing, starting with the oldest to the youngest.
Is it clear what is considered our community? Is it just Southold
No.
Village, Southold
No.
Town?
I spent 25
East
minutes,
End.
yeah. I spent 25 minutes on the phone with the Department of Health, and they said it could be the whole East End. They said it could be, like, for instance, when certain districts, Riverhead had a yellow
And Hampton Bays, I
designation.
believe.
Hampton Bays did too, but all of Hampton Bays was in the yellow, whereas only part of Riverhead was. So, for instance, Sachem, Connecticut, Longwood, really big school districts. There's very real possibilities that half of their district could be yellow or orange or red, and the other half not. For us, because our schools are on the same property, we're all gonna be in the same zone. But we could also be in the same zone as Mattituck and Greenport. They won't tell us what the zones are. Not that they won't tell us. I can't find the answers to where they are. And
It was kind
yeah.
of a rhetorical
Yeah.
question, but I didn't think we
It's a good question, because I asked it to the Department of Health, and they said that,
They'll let us know when.
yeah, they'll let us, they said the one thing they did tell me, which was promising, is that they would try to give us notice if they believe that we're going to move into a colored zone, so that we could get prepared.
And the odds are, if we're in the colored zone, it'd be the same colored zone as Mattituck and Greenport.
I would assume.
I'm not so sure about that, because what I took from what I read was if they come up with a cluster
Yeah,
of people, whoever, testing positive in a certain spot, like the zone could be the North Fork
yeah,
or Southold Town, but the cluster could
smaller.
affect Southold and Mattituck because it could be in New Suffolk.
Oh,
yeah.
Or the cluster could be in East Marion.
Gotcha.
I think, as my understanding is, the cluster is the physical location of that concentration of positive cases, and then that's why only part, because
Yeah.
that case has affected Phillips Avenue School, or whatever school it was.
That's your microcluster piece,
Okay.
and then they would designate any school that's in that microcluster. We, as a district, won't be split when it comes to our schools. But the truth is, like, the end of our neighborhoods where some of our kids live might not be in the yellow designation on either end.
Yeah, okay.
You know, whereas, but if our schools are, then anybody that attends here would fall into that.
Let's hope we don't have to worry about it.
You made a
Yes.
very brief comment there that if we got into the red zone, we would be doing random testing, 10%, whatever.
Yeah,
But would that still be only people who approve,
Yes.
parents who approved? In other
yes,
words, we
there's
will,
no mandatory testing done.
you will not at this juncture, if something like that was to happen, people would be made very much aware of that ahead of time.
Yes.
We were going to be doing
Yeah.
everything mandatory.
We,
Okay.
we will, we will never be doing mandatory testing here.
I mean, parents
That's
can
the
have the choice
intention.
that you can't send children to school if you won't test. I mean, that could
Yes,
be a.
we may have to close. You know, look, if we don't have people that will test, and if the guidelines are, you have to test 25% of your population, half in the first 2 weeks, half in the second 2 weeks. If we don't have 25% of our on-site population to test, then the other option is to close.
To close, right, okay.
If we did our survey and 10% of the people said that they were willing to test or have their children tested, then we wouldn't even have to come up with a plan. We would just close if we got designated, you know. That's not what our community has said,
Right, absolutely.
so we're coming up with our plans.
Good.
By testing, I would imagine you mean the PCR test, not the rapid test?
No, it's, believe it or not, it's a rapid shallow nose test. Probably the least,
Least effective.
probably the least accurate.
Accurate.
But that's the one that they use. Yeah, you know, that's the one they use. Which to me makes me happier because the truth is, you know, that
Starting to get more compliance from the kids.
it's less traumatic, certainly. Like I had the deeper test, and you know, I don't want to give that to a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old at school. Again, it's school. They're going to come here for 13 years. You know, no offense, Doc, but you know, I brought my kids to get shots. They knew what time of year they were getting shots. They didn't love going to the doctor that time of year. You know, the rest of the year when they were getting lollipops at a physical, and they were happier. I would prefer that, you know, poking their brain is not something that we're doing at school. The test that we use, I believe the statistics are that it's not as accurate, but I believe it's more appropriate for school if you're going to test at school. Any other questions? Thank you. I just also, I just wanted to mention that our high school did an outstanding job at their play. Many of us got to see it online last month. This was all on the list for last month, but unfortunately we weren't here. Our orchestra also did an outstanding job, also online. They had kids come in, they had taped pieces, they put it all together. You know, sports started today. You know, sports started Monday. Our first full group was today, and it was nice to see the kids out there running in the chilly, fresh air, which doesn't seem to bother them. And, you know, nice to have them out and about. And then I want to congratulate Karen Krakowski, who is one of our elementary teachers, who, you know, won a very distinguished technology award for a lot of the different things that she's doing in school. So congratulations to her. It's very nice to see people that are really doing an outstanding job with our kids get accolades for it. So, thank you.
That brings us to our personnel. A couple of these are retro because we didn't meet last month, but I'm just going to go through them all. Employees leaving the district full-time permanent, Ms. J. Governal, childcare leave effective June 7th, 2021 through June 25th, 2021. Francesca Reardon, childcare leave effective April 7th, 2021 through December 15th, 2021. Employees entering the district full-time temporary, Victoria Shannon, the school psychologist, which is a leave replacement, effective January 4th, 2021 through May 21st, 2021. And then we have employees entering the district, part-time temporary, some substitute teachers, substitute teacher assistants, and substitute aides. We've got winter 2021 coaches. Is there a motion?
Can we suggest that we look at why we're maybe not appointing all the coaches right now? Simply because if we really don't know what's going to happen, things can change. Even these appointments might change if seasons change and stuff like that.
Do you want to table the coaches? with
Table the
exception?
coaches except for, I believe we're doing bowling, track, and we would need the athletic trainer because we have something this season. But I would say to table the rest because we really don't know what's going to happen and if these names are even going to be the same names. So I make a motion, we table the coaches.
The motion is to accept the superintendent's recommendations with the exception of the winter 2021 coaches. The only ones that are going to be approved this evening are the varsity bowling coach, which is Mike Carver, the boys varsity winter track, which is Joseph Corrado, the girls varsity winter track, which is Bill Heine, and the athletic trainer, which is Alyssa Kluber. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Is there a motion for that recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did you get that, Patty?
They're all tabled except for varsity bowling, boys winter track, girls winter track, and the athletic.
Right, because those are the only sports taking place, and we're meeting again at the end of the month. Okay. Section 71(9.4 here, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Southold Union Free School District pursuant to Section 71 of the New York State Civil Service Law hereby terminates an employee made known to the board who is more particularly identified in the letter sent to him dated 12/1/2020, notifying him of this anticipated board action.
So moved.
Judy, second was Brian, all in favor?
Aye.
What committee report? Building committee report.
I think we have a meeting coming up, don't we?
19.
We had one scheduled after the opening of the bid. Do you remember when that is?
Oh, I just know about the walkthrough at 10.
Walkthrough is when?
The walkthrough at 10 o'clock for the
When?
for the architect is tomorrow at 10.
Okay, so we decided after we decided our next meeting would be after we looked at all the architect stuff. So yes, that's when we'll be meeting.
I just want to take note and express gratitude that those turbine things on the top of the gym are gone before they fell off. So whoever was responsible for that, hey, thanks. Policy committee report.
Nothing.
New business. Anybody have new business? I have something, but I don't know if it's now or if it should be at the budget form, but I'll just mention it now. At some point, maybe in the next month, can we get an update as to our finances regarding our COVID expenditures and where we may stand? 'Cause we'll be like halfway through the school year, and I imagine we certainly couldn't have budgeted because nobody knew what was going to happen. So if we could get an idea on, I know we're keeping things separated by COVID expenditures, and I just,
Yeah, sure.
going into the budget season, which we're going to be doing beginning tonight.
Would you like them categorized like ongoing and, for instance, the shields?
One-time purchase?
Yeah, there's
yeah.
one-time purchases, there are ongoing purchases.
I think that's a
There's-
great idea.
Because if we give you a number and you double it, because it's half a year.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Right.
Right.
And whether, and like overtime costs, things
Right.
like that, because I'm sure we've had overtime for custodial staff, things
We're
like
we're
that.
categorizing all of it, so we'll
Yeah.
put it all together for you.
As we get closer, I think it's just, I didn't want it to be at the last minute, say, oh my gosh, we're in trouble, where we could know ahead of time. Thank you. That brings us to our second hearing of visitors. At this time, we will entertain comments and questions about anything you want to talk about that has to do with school. Any of you ladies want to get up and talk? No, we're not at the budget forum yet. This is our regular board meeting.
We're doing two in a row.
Does
Sorry.
anybody want to address the board now? Okay. That brings us to our board member commentary. Mr. Tobin.
Nothing there.
Just two things. First, I would like to just again thank our custodial and building staff. Obviously, they continue to arrange and rearrange and put in shields and move desks and all that stuff. It just doesn't seem to be like a one-time job keeping up with the things that we want to try and do educationally here. So just another shout out and thank you for all that they've done.
And the other thing, you mentioned the play, which I thought was really fun. I got my little log on and everything. And, you know, if you can ever look at silver linings and things that maybe you want to keep after all of this, I think it would be wonderful if we talk to the drama club about maybe always having that option to, you know, live stream, pay for it, and get your link and sit in your living room, because, you know, it might be that you're not in Southold. You know, I know there's been plays that I've missed because I've been away with the robotics team, but I've been sitting in a hotel room and I could have certainly watched them on my laptop. So, and the other thing is, even with our concerts, even though our concerts are typically free, but, you know, if you have a grandma who's over in, you know, California or something, I think it's really cool. And I think the idea of live streaming it is, you know you're watching it as it happens, so I think that's exciting. And then maybe even having the option for the plays to, you know, pay for a link even after the fact. You know, so if you haven't been able to watch it, well then. So I just think that that's something that maybe could pass on, that this board member thought was really incredible. So that's all.
Scott? Mr. Latham, I should say.
Just glad everybody's back in school, everybody's healthy, and I want to thank you for the PowerPoint being both English and Spanish, because nobody shows up at our meetings other than these fine three, but I'm sure there are people that don't speak English that watch it on TV, and I think that shows our commitment to our community. Thank you.
So when we post our stuff, all of our letters, all of our things, we always post it. Anything goes posted on our website, we put it in 2 languages.
A lot of times things like this get forgotten, especially in you know, local government and whatnot, and I just think it's important.
Thank you. Dr. Green?
Nothing.
And I've got nothing. At this point, we adjourn and then go to the budget hearing, right? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Or all in favor? And now we will turn this over to Mr. Scheid. Is this yours now? Is this?
Yes, it
I
is.
don't know who it is, but it's not it's our budget forum.
It is.
Probably in another January already.
Oh, for a year that was not. It was
Right.
bad.
Yeah.
So Happy New Year, correct, right? I can't believe I'm saying the 2021-22 budget season. I'm just getting over the 1920 audit, so I'm sure I'm not going to say the dates right. Just again, as I'm sure you all know, but just an update where we stand and the budget process. So at this point, a few weeks ago, I've handed out all the budget worksheets to all the different department heads. They're working it out with their department, putting everything together. They are due back to the district by roughly January 15th. That starts the point when Dr. Morrow and myself will meet with each department head, go through, and any questions, anything, again, to kind of get that budget narrowed down. The ultimate plan is to give you, the board, a draft of the budget line by line right before the Friday before the break. Sometimes it's balanced, sometimes it's not, but our plan is to give a balanced budget, of course. Just a couple of key things that are coming up so far with next year's numbers. One is the health insurance. Good news, the East End Health Plan health insurance rate, they estimated it will be no more than a 2% increase, which is, again, great news. Looks like the teachers' retirement system rate on the salaries for teachers will no increase up to 10%. So right now we pay 9.53%. So we're looking at roughly a 5% increase for the teachers' retirement system. The ERS, the employees' retirement system, is expected, for a while it's always been pretty flat, but this next year they anticipate it's going to go up. There's different tiers, but it's roughly going up from 14.7% to roughly 16.4%. And again, to repeat, that's for employees, retirement system, individuals. The big question mark, of course, is the state aid question mark. It's you're hearing 20% cuts, and sometimes you don't even know, like, is it 20% of what? Our state aid is roughly 1.8 million. Is it foundation aid, which is roughly $1 million? So we hope to get more clarification, hopefully by the end of January, by the time the draft is ready, just to give a better, again, I'm hoping that's a high estimate, the 20%. But we know, again, that the state's not in great fiscal shape, so we definitely anticipate, again, Dr. Morrow and I have been speaking, that Next year will be a tough budget. The year after, it could be some tough times. I have to say, especially the next budget meeting is set for March 3rd. That's the point. We go more into detail the reserves. So my point is we are in good financial shape, especially even the last couple of years, building up our reserves. And now is the time we are going to use these reserves as a revenue source. So this way, as I mentioned, say the TRS or the ERS rates, if those expenditures go up, I increase the revenue line for using the reserves for the TRS and the ERS. So this way, you don't go to the taxpayers for that increase. You use the reserves, and it helps again flatten the tax increase.
But when do you find out what our allowable increase is? You know, our 2%, our whatever
Our calculation.
our calculation. When,
You know, that-
when do you find that out?
Right, so right now, for the 2% tax cap, by the end of the month, I do expect to see the consumer price index, which is a
Okay.
big factor. We do have the tax growth rate, so that's based on, I call it the brick and mortar increases for the town. That is roughly 0.8%. That number is actually pretty good. We've averaged just under 0.7% probably over the last 10 years. It's been 0.5, so that's a 0.8 increase, right? So that's also next March 3rd, I'll go over more of a detailed line by line. But right, it's consumer price index, I think I'm looking at roughly 1.6%. You know, hopefully anything under 1 would be pretty difficult to deal with. Obviously, for a budget point of view, 2% would be ideal, but that we'll keep an eye on it. But yeah, I hope to get more solid numbers by the end of the month.
Okay, all right.
So we're gonna put bets on how good you are at predicting. Got you down for 1.6%.
Right.
What were we, 1.86?
Last year we were 1.87 or 1.67 this past year?
I'm sorry, for what?
This
This current
budget.
year, were we
What was our
1.87 or 1.67? I don't remember.
I can't remember either.
Yeah, I think it might be something like that. I don't-
It was something points, I don't know if
I
it
can't
was 8.7 or 1.67. I know it was one of those. Anyway, okay.
Thank you.
I was busy doing that with you last night.
Anybody from the community care to weigh in on our budget? State your name, please.
Angela Tondo. So after 18 years in Southold School and 15 years at the board meetings, this is my last one where I get to say what I want. Next year I'm asking to please not raise my taxes. So it's my hope that we continue to maintain all our current classes, programs, clubs, sports, and all of those for next year for our students. It's my hope that we continue to provide our teachers with the support and help that they need to give our students the best education, whether that's classroom aides, teacher assistants, certified substitute teachers, and most importantly, professional development. I hope that with all the money that we spend from the bond, that we continue to maintain our buildings. It did come to my attention recently that the ceiling inside the tech room is leaking. I don't know if there's leaks anywhere else, but I know someone said there's buckets catching water. I did want to ask about the COVID, what we're spending, but Paulette, you touched on that, so hopefully we'll have some money to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All righty then. We know how lucky we are because our community has supported our budget for the last many years, and it's a community we have to be grateful to for supporting our budget. So we already adjourned, and if nobody else cares to say anything, we're done, right? See you in a couple weeks.